I love Minions, and they use that little fart gun. Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
Can you picture the fart gun? Okay, so I would picture that fart gun. One, it would disarm me when I would picture the fart gun. But my son is like yelling at me, and I picture his words going in the gun and out the other side saying, I need you. And so every time he would say something or he would hit me or I would just hear, I need you, I need you, I need you.
Welcome to the Dad Central Show, hosted by Ed Gow Jr. and Drew Solon. We know dads want to see their kids succeed, but they don't always know how to get there. This show gives dads the tools they need to raise confident and successful kids.
Hey, what is up, everybody? I was going to say something else. Ed Gow Jr.
Your alter ego.
One of the many I have from the Dad Central Show and Dad Central. I just finished something on another platform, so I had to rewind and get myself right. So another different introduction for Drew. What's going on?
No, not different. Drew Solon, Dad Central.
No,
Ed's referring to his alter ego as Dr. Vibe, the man behind the Dr. Vibe show. So he was about to introduce himself as his alter ego, revealing, you
already did that now. What's going on?
Well, it's for us, it's about planning for the holidays now. I don't know how many other dads do this, but with 5 kids now, the holidays can get quite expensive. So Kristen and I were talking about, what is the budget for the holidays? How much per kid are we really going to be spending just to keep it reasonable? I don't know what other thoughts are on that, but for me, that's like a must. Otherwise, it gets crazy.
Well, it's interesting. Once in a while, I listen to the news. Once in a while, and recently on my listening, there was surveys done in Canada that the average family is going to spend about anywhere from 10 to 15% less on Christmas this year, or the holiday season, but proper, than they did last year. So it's going to be interesting to see how people manage, maneuver, and handle the upcoming holiday season. So should be interesting. And I'm certainly offline going to hear how you're going to navigate it, Drew.
Well, I think the holidays really should be about connection. It should be about creating memories and kind of the reason for the season, as opposed to a lot of the commercialism that I think can often trap us and leave us feeling actually more worn out and stressed after the holidays instead of refreshed and renewed and ready for a new year. But that's just my perspective.
Well, there you go. Well, let's talk about it. The Dad Central Show is sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care. Dove Men Plus Care believes that care is the best of a man, because when men can care for themselves and others, there is a positive impact. So we have a brand new friend, a brand new vibrant friend who's going to be with us today. So Drew, I'll let you do the intro. Well,
thank you, Ed. Honestly, very excited for this conversation because we are having Dayna Abraham. Now, she is the best-selling author of A Super Kid's Activity Guide to Conquering Every Day and Sensory Processing 101. And the reason I'm so excited is because she is on a mission to create a more accepting world, one challenging kid at a time. And I know as parents, all of our kids might at times seem challenging, but we need to know how to handle that. So Dayna is a national board certified educator. She's a parent of 3 neurodivergent children and an ADHD adult herself. So she brings a unique and out-of-the-box perspective to parents raising kids in the modern world. She's the founder of the popular parenting website Lemon Lime Adventures, which, get this, has accumulated more than 41 million viewers in less than 7 years. So through Dayna's compassionate framework, Calm the Chaos, which I can't wait to learn more about, she's helped millions of desperate parents around the world find peace and meet their children where they're at when conventional parenting tools have failed them. So Dayna, thanks so much for being here. We're so excited for this conversation.
I am so excited to be here and honored to be here.
Excellent. This is going to be good. It's going to be good. Drew, I'll let you kick it off.
Well, Dayna, we usually love to start with getting a little bit of the backstory on our guests. And just so maybe you decide where to start, but I know you founded the blog Lemon Lime Adventures, and that's really grown into where you're at now in terms of Calm the Chaos. Maybe why don't you start by there? Talk to us a little bit about the genesis of this whole idea of Lemon Lime Adventures?
Yeah. So funny story. I actually just had my 10-year blogiversary, just like this week.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Right. So pretty cool full circle moment of, wow, 10 years in the making of where I've been to where I am today and what has come of it. Because when I started Lemon Lime Adventures, actually the memory that popped up from on Facebook was, today is the last day that my kid is going to public school. And tomorrow we start homeschooling. So I had 2 kids at the time, or 3 kids at the time, but backing up just a couple of months, I was pregnant with my 3rd child, and I had 2 boys that were older. They were 7 and 5. And my 7-year-old was getting in so much trouble at school. He had been kicked out of preschool. He had been in trouble in kindergarten. 1st grade, he was starting to get sent home from school. And by 2nd grade, he was suspended more days than he was in school. And there was this one particular day where he had a really big explosive meltdown at school. So I get a call and they say, you need to get to school, come as fast as you can. And so I was 9 months pregnant, got to the school, and there was a line of people when I walked in the door. And it was the staff, it was counselors, it was the principal, and there were even police officers there. And they had my son in a glassed-in room in the office, and they made me walk past my son. I couldn't help him. They took me to the office. The principal sat me down, and she said, you have 2 options. You can either A, let this officer take your son into custody, or B, you can take your son home and don't bring him back till you figure out what's wrong with him. Now, that's illegal, and you can't do that. We're not going to go into that topic right now. But I chose option B, obviously, took him home. And for a while, I worked through how to get the school to support him and how to get him the services he needed. But it became so evident that the school system just wasn't going to work for him. And I know not everyone can do this, but I just decided to go all in. I quit my job. I was a teacher at the time. And I decided to stay home with all 3 of them, homeschool my kids. And I started Lemon Lime Adventures, the blog, because I was looking for how to help my son. I felt out of my league, even though I had all this expertise as an educator. I'd been in the classroom for 12 years. And I just felt like such a failure as a parent, as even an educator. I was like, what have I done so wrong to get here? And so I was searching online, and everything I found was picture perfect. Everyone had answers and everyone had it figured out, but they weren't quite telling you how to do it. It just looked great. And so I started Lemon Lime Adventures with this idea that I didn't want another parent to feel as isolated and alone as I felt in that moment. And I didn't want any children to feel like my son felt when we were going through this. And so I was going to do whatever I needed to do and just kind of share our story. And I was going to share the good days and the bad days. That's where lemon and lime comes from. So the sweet and sour parts of life, I was going to share it all so that it was really open and honest. So no one would come to my site and feel like I was judging them, or I was shaming them, or I was pretending like I had the perfect answer.
Okay.
Yeah, well, thank you for that story. A lot in there. Ed, did you have something you wanted to hop in with?
How long do we got? No, I'm just joking. I just from that story, in a glass, really.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Drew. That's all I wanted to say. I could go over just right there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, as you're going, one, I think the importance of being real and honest, and an opening up is not easy.
Mm-mm.
But I love the fact that you said, I felt so alone and isolated, and it really drove me because I didn't want anyone else to feel that way as well. It can be lonely and isolating, and we talk about this from a dad perspective, and that many fathers feel very isolated in their parenting journey. They feel that there aren't options or ways to be supported. So I guess maybe can you share with us, how did you work through that for yourself as you started this journey?
So with the isolation, I mean, I really started the blog as a in hopes that I would find one person who would comment on one of my blog posts or who would follow me on Facebook and would say, oh, I get it. I'm going through this too. So I was just looking for one other person. Little did I know that there were going to be millions of people over the next 10 years who were going to come to the site and who were going to say, oh my gosh, I'm going through that same thing. Or I have had something similar happen. And so to me, it was finding and creating that community or that village they say there is. And I had to create that online because I couldn't find it in the in-person world. And because my, teachers, my teacher friends and other therapists that I was taking my kid to, it was just constant blaming. It is your fault if you were just a stricter parent, if you just set firmer boundaries, if you just told him how he was supposed to act, he would stop. And, all these things that obviously I had tried. And, I tried things that I didn't like, and I had tried things that I did like and couldn't still help my kid. And so I had to ground myself in the fact that yes, I was homeschooling him, but my main goal was twofold. One, I didn't want him to hate himself for not fitting in. And two, I didn't want him to hate everyone else for not understanding him. Because I truly believed that if he either hated himself or he hated others, that's where these dangerous behaviors start coming from, and they can place that pain on themselves and hurt themselves, or they can place it outward. And we see that happening in the world today. And so I had known that from my past and the things that had happened. I a sibling of a bipolar brother. So I was the recipient of a lot of explosive behavior growing up. And I had also seen what happens when you place that hatred inward, and then you feel like you're not enough. You feel like you're not worthy. You feel like you don't deserve to be here on this planet. And I just didn't want that for him. And so even if I felt isolated, that was my driving force. That's what grounded me every day. Is this isn't about me. This is about helping him find his place and footing in this world.
Sounds like a very powerful why, a very powerful reason to keep going and pursuing, even in the midst of that isolation. And I think that's one of the main reasons that we talk about our sub tagline for our show is tools to raise confident, successful kids, right? So I think that you said, I was really curious, when was the aha moment for you then? When did things start to click with your son?
I think they started slowly changing. And honestly, it was probably way too late that I had the aha moment that we were in the clear or things were getting better, because it didn't magically happen overnight. There wasn't this like mystical day where it was like, ta-da, you now have figured out your son and he is amazing and he is doing great and everything. We still have hard days. And even now he's 18 and we still have hard days. But they are few and far between, and they don't wreck our life. And that is when I started to realize, we can have a bad day and it's a moment in time. It doesn't ruin our relationship, and it doesn't carry on over days, weeks, months. And so that's when I knew that we were onto something, because I was able to see that this was shifting in our own family, and I started sharing it online. And at first, I just shared all of the knowledge I had learned, but I wasn't sharing how to put it together because I didn't realize that's what I needed. And it wasn't until I had a friend of mine who had gone through my early courses, and it was all the theory and all the information and the understanding about why this was happening. And she called me and she says, that's it. I need to give up. I'm going to hand my kid over to the professionals. Like, they can take over. I'm not cut out for this. And I said, all right, do you trust me? And she was like, yes, I do. And I said, okay, you've been through all our stuff. I think you have everything you need inside you already. What if we just see if we can simplify this down to its simplest form? And she was like, all right. And I said, okay, what can you remind yourself when your kid is, at this point, he was really aggressive. He was aggressive at school. He was having like 56 aggressive instances in a week. And then at home, he was like, hitting his sister, and they were getting into fights all the time. And I said, what can you remind yourself in that moment that is going to help you stay calm? And because we had gone through all the theory and stuff, she knew all these things. She said, well, I could picture him as a baby, because if I picture him as a baby, when he was a baby and he cried, I knew he needed me. And so I could just like take a deep breath. I could picture him as a baby and just realize that he needs something in that moment, not that he is trying to be mean or manipulative or hurtful. And I said, okay, will that help you stay calm? She said, yes. I said, okay, how can you connect with him and let him feel seen and heard in that moment? And she said, well, I can't get too close because he'll kick me or he'll hit me. So I can't really like hug him or go and move him. But what I can do is I can move close enough and I can just say, I see you're struggling. I'm here when you're ready. I said, okay. And then I said, how can you remind yourself that there's something else going on here, that it's not against the sibling or it's not against you? And she said, well, I can just stay curious and I can just remind myself that all behavior is communication. Okay, great. Now let's put it all together. What can you say or do in that moment that can get you and him to safety? And she said, well, I can sit down beside him and say, I can remove the sister. So the sister's out of danger. And I can sit beside him and say, I'm here when you're ready. I can see that you're having a hard time and we'll solve this after we calm down. And then I'll offer a hug for when he's ready. And so she went and tried that. It was just a simple 4-step. She went and tried it. And within 1.5 days, this is the crazy part, 1.5 days, it started working. And then within a week, the aggression at school calmed down. And then within 2 weeks, he was using it on her when she was getting triggered. He was like, Mom, I noticed that you're really struggling. Do you need to take a break? Or do you need to take a deep breath? And so he was then using it on her. And I think it was in that moment that I was like, wait a second, we have figured something out that actually works. And that's when we really kind of went back to the drawing board and we laid it all out and started teaching more parents. And that's where Calm the Chaos was born.
Wonderful story, but so much was included in that. So would you maybe go back to the basics for us and for our listeners? You talked about the idea of keeping herself calm. You talked about her thoughts. You talked about safety. So I don't know wherever you'd like to start, but I think all of those are really important, and especially in the context of dads and dad's ability to do those things. And obviously, I know you're not a dad, but you obviously have a partner. But you've trained and coached so many people. Can you just talk to us about where would you begin if a dad's coming to you and he's kind of saying, I'm at my wit's end? He's kind of like where your client was.
Yeah. So one of the things that we found is that it can be really overwhelming. There's all this information out there and there's 9,899 parenting experts telling you what you should do. And so in the moment when your kid is hitting, or in the moment when your kid is lying to you, or they aren't getting their homework done, whatever it is, it can feel like an attack on you. And it can feel like they're doing it to you, against you. And so your brain goes into protection mode. And you're going to forget all these great tips and strategies and tools that you might have heard about on the podcast or learned about or read about. And so one of the things that we found is that we need a framework that kind of simplifies it. Like, what are the 4 just essentials? Because I am all about, when we're overwhelmed, we need to remove everything else and get it down to its simplest form. So what are those 4 most simplest things? And then we need a plan that's going to work, but we can't do it at an advanced level where we try to jump in. And this is very common for dads. We jump in and we try to fix and we try to solve and we try to protect. And I'm saying we, but as dads, dads try to jump in, they try to fix, they try to solve, they try to get it to end as quick as possible. And that is further down the kind of the pathway or the journey towards change. We can't jump in at solving and fixing. We have to start with safety, both for ourselves and for our kids. And so that's where the second piece came, which is, we call it the roadmap. And it has 5 stages and it takes you step by step from being in this like survival mode, dealing with those really dangerous, challenging behaviors or challenging situations. 2, we're going to create systems that work for everyone. We're going to create new routines, new rules, new values as a family. That can't happen until the first stages have happened. So taking it back to the beginning, where I tell everyone to get started is we call it ride the storm. That's stage 1. And it's learning how to hunker down and ride through those really, really challenging moments without trying to fix it, without trying to solve it, without trying to talk it out, without trying to punish it out or reward it out or whatever it is. You're really just hunkering down. And it's a lot like when a tornado hits or when I'm in Tornado Alley. I'm in Arkansas. And so I have had a lot of practice in learning what to do and prep for a tornado. And you are not trying to outrun a tornado. You are not trying to stop the tornado from coming because you can't. Instead, you're going to the basement. You're going to a storm shelter. You're hiding under the stairs and you are literally just waiting it out. You're hunkering down. And that's what that first stage is all about. And so if someone comes to me, I'm like, that's the first thing we're going to do. And in there's 4 key steps. And those same steps are the same all the way from basics to the end. So we can start breaking those down, but I just want to make sure that you don't have any questions so far before I break them down.
Yeah, that's so good. And really, I'm reminded of this viral video that was going through Facebook, and it was a picture of a dad with his like 2-year-old toddler, or maybe not quite, maybe 18 months. And she's just melting down, like freaking out. And he's just sitting there almost like a statue. So when you said this idea of hunkering down, weathering the storm, he was a great model or example of weathering that storm. And, it was safe for the child to do that. He wasn't going to get hurt and the child wasn't hurting anything else. Yeah. And then eventually the child, after about like 2.5 minutes, eventually comes and just like cuddles right into. Right. Yes. And I think that's a great picture of what you're talking about, riding the storm of these intense emotions. I'm going to tell you this. When I was a dad to twin toddlers with a newborn, I did not understand that. And this idea of fixing or solving or wanting it to end right away was exactly where I was. So I totally get, and I think your picture is dead on. And so dads, if I can tell you one thing, what Dayna just said is solid gold. And ride out the storm as best you can and identify if you are getting triggered, if you are the one who, I got to fix this, I got to end it. That's the challenge. Yeah. You got to put that aside and you got to ride out the storm and then get to the other side of it. Because that's where I'm going to assume, Dayna, that's where things start to move in the right direction. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah. Ed,
so,
you want to hop in? Oh, go ahead, Dayna.
Well, I have something to ask, but since you want to break down that, I'll parking lot it after you finish. Because I still I have a question about what you started off with, but I'm going to parking lot that until you break it down because it's your show. We're steering the ship. You're driving the ship.
I have one point, and I think this may relate to it or not, but you talked about neurodivergent children. So I mean, my children, at least I don't know. I don't think they're neurodivergent. They were toddlers and the twins and et cetera. So is this more challenging with a neurodivergent child? Are there different things we need to do? Can you talk about that for any of the dads?
And define what that is and define what that is.
Yeah, absolutely. So I define neurodivergence as just like we have differences in culture, in race, in ethnicity, all these things. And we have differences in our learning styles and in our modalities of learning, all those things. We have differences in the way our brains are wired and work. That is, all people have a different brain wiring. And that's what the science has shown and proven. And so that's what neurodivergence means, is that we all have differences in our brains. Now, there are norms that many people adhere to. And that's when you go to the doctor's office and they say by 2, your kids should be talking, by 3, your kids should be doing, there's these milestones because this is the general consensus of what kids should and shouldn't be doing at certain ages. When that veers off, then we start getting diagnoses, we start getting labels, we start getting these things that are very helpful in creating support systems and understanding different things. And so when I say that I'm neurodivergent, that means that I have a diagnosis of ADHD and anxiety, and I know that about myself. But I've always been very different and quirky, and I was really fiery as a little girl. Like my mom and I were always butting heads. My mom was a super highly creative person and struggled to fit into her world, and she wanted nothing more than for me to not have the struggles she had. So she wanted me to fit in, but here's me. Like, look at me. I don't fit in. I was like this as a kid. I wanted to wear crazy hair colors and pierce my ears and my body parts. And I wanted to have a black wall in my bedroom. I mean, I really upset my mom growing up. But growing up, I didn't have any labels. I didn't have any diagnoses. But I was clearly still different than your average bear. And so I think that if we worry about, does this only work for quote unquote neurodivergent kids or like children with diagnoses, then we're missing the point that all children operate differently and need us to create safety for them, need to feel seen, heard, and accepted for who they are. And they need us to understand where their challenges are coming from, whether it links to a diagnosis or not. So does it create more challenges? Yes, right? If you have a child who doesn't speak with verbal language, if you have a child who's incredibly impulsive, if you have a child who is lacking executive functioning skills, meaning that they're not able to plan or organize or start task or end task, is going to be more challenging. If you have a child who shuts down at any sight of an expectation or a demand, or you have a child who is highly emotional and cries at like the smallest thing, it is going to be harder. But I think that the more that all parents understand these nuances and how to see their kids differently, how to change the way they see their kids or think about their kids, their mindset around it, I think that we will create that more accepting world we were talking about earlier.
Are you a dad who feels like you're juggling a million things at once? Balancing work, family, and personal goals can be overwhelming. But what if there was a solution? That's why we created our new fatherhood community called Dad Mentor. For over 20 years, Dad Central has built practical tools to help dads. We understand the challenges you face and provide the support you need to thrive. The biggest complaint we hear from dads is there's no dedicated support for their specific needs. But not anymore. Our new community, called Dad Mentor, is here to transform your fatherhood experience. Imagine feeling in control, staying calm and patient when your children misbehave. Picture yourself connected to your children, guiding them with confidence and watching them succeed. When you join Dad Mentor, you'll have access to a community of like-minded dads committed to their dad journey, just like you. You'll also get the Dad's Roadmap. This is a step-by-step plan to help you go from unsure to unstoppable as a dad. Monthly masterclasses and Q&A sessions. You'll get answers and know exactly what to do straight from experts. Monthly group meetups that connect dads over common topics. A dad's resource library. Curated webinars, podcasts, or guides built by Dad Central to help you grow as a parent. And finally, you'll also get exclusive members-only offers and events. Now, many dads do try to do this fatherhood thing alone, only to find themselves trapped in frustration and strained relationships. Then they may turn to unhealthy coping mechanisms like drugs, alcohol, or other distractions, leaving their family and their own well-being at risk. We don't want you to reach that point of regret. Take steps to invest in you and your family today. Join Dad Mentor and go from stressed, tired, and overwhelmed to confident, calm, and connected. Join us today by going to dadcentral.ca/dads.
So breaking down the framework. So what I found as I worked with my son, as I worked with other parents, is I found that there were these 4 key ingredients, kind of like baking a cake, that you need for solving really any challenge, especially a challenge with another human. And in this case, we're talking about children. So parent-child relationships. But you need connection. You hear that a lot. We hear that children need to feel attached. They need to feel connected. They need to feel validated and heard. And when I talk about connection here, I'm really talking about that radical acceptance, accepting the child you have in front of you, not the child that you thought you were going to create when you said, I want to have kids. But instead the child you actually got.
Can we pause on that for a second?
Yeah, we can.
The reason I want to pause that, because I think that, and I'm not picking on dads, but I think I hear it more often, that this might be hard for dads, right? That aspect there of accepting the child that's in front of you than necessarily the child that you envision. I remember being a dad, picturing, doing certain things with my kids, and what they're going to be like. And, anyways, can you talk a little about how can you do that?
Yeah. Maybe? So it's really hard when you're first starting out, which is why we have those stages. And so at each stage, we kind of unravel that a little bit more. When you're first starting out, it's just knowing that your child wants to feel seen and heard and valued. And if you know that, it's going to help you see their behavior a little differently. But as you progress, you can start to realize maybe what were some of your expectations? What did you think? And what pieces can you let go? And what parts can you share with your child? And the more connection and understanding you have with your child, the more receptive they'll be to hearing your concerns or hearing the hopes and dreams you had or the wishes that you had. But when we're first starting out, it's just that acknowledgement and that realization of, wait a second, I did want something different and this is not what I got. And so, okay, if I can just put it in the parking lot, like you said, I'm going to put that in the parking lot. We're not going to handle it right now, but we're going to know that may be the source of my frustration.
I'm just going to add one little thing on that. And this is a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
But I won't say lots of, but a number of dads have never been exposed to connection, whether it's with men of their own or even in their fathering. So it's even for many dads a steeper climb because they don't know how to do it because they've never experienced it.
Absolutely. They were not validated for their feelings. They were not allowed to be who they are. They were expected to be the man of the house. They were expected to follow in the footsteps. They were expected to go to school, go to college, get a degree, be the earner of the family, right? And so they had to figure out a way to make it work. Why can't their kids? And so
do you still hear that? Are you hearing that consistently along your journey?
Yes, 100%. Still hear that. I still hear so much. And I hear a lot from men in particularly, because a lot of times it's the moms who are doing this education and they're learning more about the brain development and child development and all of these new things that we know about the way that the brain and the body work together. And a lot of times the dads are a couple of decades behind on that and they have not started because, they are the provider. It's new, recent history that the men are not the provider. And so it's ingrained in our societal pressures that the men should be right. And so it's going to take us some time. And so I am still seeing it quite a bit, especially we serve people all over the world. So I see it even more in European countries. And I see in certain cultures, I see it more where it is this expectation and that men have on themselves. And so they have a hard time giving themselves permission to be who they are because they were told for so long, like, shut that down, quit doing that. Like, no, be a big boy or, be a man. And so they have embodied that belief. And now it's really hard for them to allow themselves to have feelings and emotions. And like you said, this is a whole nother conversation and a whole nother but yeah.
Well, I'm going to keep quiet because there's more I could go into that, but we want you to get the rest of the other three done. So I'm going to quiet myself.
Okay. So we've figured out there's like a big one right there, right? There's a trigger right there is that connection point. But The second part is understanding. And we already said that for dads, and not all dads, but I'll just give a quick story. When we were struggling the most with my son, I read a book called The Explosive Child. And I was like, okay, I think if you read this, it would be really helpful. And so I hand it to my husband. And of course, he did not want to read it. But at the same time, we had a turtle, and the turtle tank was getting really dirty, and we couldn't figure out what was wrong with it, why it kept getting dirty as soon as we'd clean it. So my husband went on this month-long, deep dive into all things turtles and figured out how to fix the turtle. And I remember being so frustrated. Why are you not taking that same drive to figure out the turtle and figure out the turtle tank and put it towards figuring out your son and figuring out how to help him, figuring out what's happening? And I think it was just, and he says now that it was so abstract and he didn't feel like he had the ability to help his son yet. And he didn't feel like he was the expert or he could be the expert. Whereas anyone can be an expert on a turtle and, or figure out the car or figure out electronics or sound engineering. He's like, I could figure that out because it's very clear. A plus B equals C. Whereas with my son and figuring out why he was doing what he was doing, it was not as clear, cut, and dry as A plus B equals C. And so as a fixer, that understanding piece was something that he held off on for quite a long time.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think we have talked a little bit about, not in the show, but just at Dad Central, some of the barriers, the internal barriers, and also those external barriers, which we've actually touched on both of them, that they do hold dads back or prevent them from jumping in. Maybe can you talk now the flip side? Now that he's gone into that, where's he at and what's helped him?
Again, it's that pathway, right? So when we're first starting out, it starts with just you have to make a choice that I am going to have a different idea of what is behind this behavior or behind this challenge. Because if I don't, I'm going to keep reacting and responding the way I am. And I want to have a better relationship with my kid. And so if that drive is enough, you can then say, okay, what understanding do I need to have? Okay, well, this random lady in a pink shirt on Dad Central told us that all behavior is communication, meaning all behavior is a sign that something else is going on. And so I'm going to believe her on this one because I want to have a better relationship with my kids. So it starts with just that shift, that very slight mindset shift. And then you can expand that into, okay, what do I understand about myself? What boosts me? What drains me? What makes me kind of have a bad attitude or behave a certain way? And if we can understand that about ourselves, well, oh, wait a second. When my kid is yelling at me, now what's under the surface? Is it that they're missing a basic need? Are they hungry? Are they tired? Do they have a sensory need? Are they feeling like they're not connected? But you can't get there until you first just allow yourself to have this shift. And that's part of that ride the storm plan we were talking about earlier. And that understand piece here is that either A, it's all behaviors communication, my child's not giving me a hard time, they're having a hard time. So that's the first one. And the second one of the most powerful shifts, but really, 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 really hard I have found for dads is, do you guys remember the song by Carly Simon? You probably think this song is about me. You're so vain, right? Okay. So
yes,
take that and think about your child's behavior. And so we use a shift called we used to call it Operation Carly Simon, but it's, you probably think this meltdown, you probably think this behavior is about you. It is not. Even if they're yelling at you, even if they're calling you a terrible dad, even if they're saying you're the worst, I wish you'd die, the worst thing they could possibly say, it still is not about you. It is about their pain, their frustration, their struggles. And so when we can depersonalize it, now this is harder than it sounds, but just reminding ourselves, it's not about me. It's not about me. This is not forever. It is not about me. That is the first step to understanding our kids.
Yeah, that's such a good one. And I'm going to add on here, dads, look into this idea based on what Dayna was just saying. When your kid is seemingly giving you a hard time, do you feel disrespected?
Mm-hmm.
And if you do, then that's a challenge, because you're going to have to do what Dayna said. You're going to have to, it's not about you.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have to do the Carly Simon. It's not about you.
Mm-hmm.
You're not being disrespected. Your child is having a hard time and they need you to help them.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're going to get to that. Hold on to that. They need you. Hold that. And because we're going to get to, that's the fourth piece of this puzzle. And so,
Okay.
yeah. So the third piece, so we've done connection, understanding. The third one is empowerment. And so everyone needs to feel like they have a say, like they have a voice at the table. And when they don't, that's where you're going to see behaviors from the adult or behaviors from the kid. And so there has to be, and this isn't, I'm going to let my kid do whatever they want so they can have a voice and they can feel great. This isn't, I'm the one in charge. It's finding that healthy mix in the middle where I am a guide and a mentor to my child, and I am helping them navigate life. Now, when you're first starting out, you're not going to have all the skills to be able to do that. So when you're first starting out, that empowerment is, how can I empower myself so I can show up as the parent I want to show up as? And a lot of times that's coming up with your plan far before the day you need it. And people will always tell me like, well, how am I supposed to create a plan before when it comes out of nowhere? And I'm telling you, like, it didn't come out of nowhere. And also, it didn't happen just once. So if it's happened once, it's probably happened 30 other times, and it's probably going to happen 30 more times. So you might as well go ahead and create a plan for yourself for how you're going to show up, because you can't change your kid until you start changing yourself. And nobody wants to hear that, but it is the truth.
Absolutely.
Well, I just, from what you just shared there, am I getting a sense of making sure you create with your child or children a safe and brave space?
Yeah. And I think that this first stage is all about creating that safe place for your child emotionally, psychologically, physically, even if if the behavior's not changing, if things aren't changing, if the situation isn't changing. I call this first plan the plan until you have a plan that works. So it's just, this is our plan to ride it out, to hunker down, to get through this where you still feel safe. You know that it's okay to have these big emotions, to have this big, for these things to happen in our home, so that when you get older, you don't have to have these behaviors out in public, because you don't need them. You already have another way of doing it. But our brain goes to, well, if they act like this in public, then this is going to happen. And if they do this when they're 18, then they're going to get arrested. And if they do this when they're 20, then they're going to we go 20 years down the road. And so we have to really stay in the here and now of like, this is not forever. This is just a moment. You're just writing it out. And the other stages are for getting ahead of it and creating change.
Absolutely. So stage 1 was connection, 2, understanding, 3, empowerment. So take us home. Stage 4.
So I'm gonna, I feel like I've confused us a little bit. So the stages are ride the storm. So we're in the ride the storm stage. Everything we've been talking about is ride the storm.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. So that's stage 1. And then every stage uses these elements that I've been sharing: connection, understanding, empowerment. And then the final one is you, the adult, the one person who is going to get grounded, stay calm, and be the one who is going to be the change. So that's that mindset piece. And you've talked about it already, those triggers, those thoughts, those things that go through your head. If you think that the kid is being disrespectful to you, if you are frustrated by the behaviors, if you think, well, in my day, we couldn't act like that, or I had to change, so you should have to change, whatever that is. Or you always do this to me. There's lots of thoughts that go through our head that can affect the way we show up. And so in Ride the Storm, we call this an anchor, creating an anchor. So this is something that is going to ground you and hold you steady when your kid is yelling at you, when your kid is quote unquote being disrespectful to you or being rude or being mean, when they're hurting their sister, right? Because we can get really triggered when our kid's hurting someone else. And so we need something that our brain is going to remember and believe. And so we use something called stop, breathe, anchor for this. So we just stop in our tracks. We take a big, deep breath in, and that gives our brain oxygen. And then we create an anchor. So earlier I told about my friend, and she created the anchor of picturing her kid as a baby because he needed her when he was a baby. And so that works for some people. My husband's anchor is very different than that. It didn't work for him to picture him as a baby because he's actually stepdad. My son's behaviors got so bad that he actually had to go to the emergency room several times because his meltdowns would get so big. We took him to the emergency room once, and 6 grown men nurses had to help my son into the building. And they stayed super calm, super grounded. And in that moment, my husband saw them and said, wait a second, they're just there helping. They are not getting triggered by my son's behaviors. They are not taking it personally. They are there because they know that he needs them. And he's like, and plus, my son, this little bitty frail 7-year-old, needed 6 grown men to hold him down and get him in the building. He is not himself in this moment. And so that it became his anchor, is he is not himself right now. He needs me. And so he found something that really worked for him. Me, I took every word he said, every action he took, and I almost put it through like this is going to be really silly, but I love Minions, and they use that little fart gun. Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
Can you picture the fart gun? Okay. So I would picture that fart gun. One, it would disarm me when I would picture the fart gun, but my son is like yelling at me, and I picture his words going in the gun and out the other side saying, I need you. And so every time he would say something, or he would hit me, or I would just hear, I need you, I need you, I need you. And that really held me steady. So that's that you piece of like just anchoring and staying calm. And then when you build that out, it's stay calm with stop, breathe, anchor. And then the connection piece in the moment is just changing your body language. Because you can't actually do a lot of connection when you're almost triggered, and then they're like acting out. You can't really touch them or anything. So it's just checking your body language. Are you scowling at them? Are you, do you have a swirly voice? And as men, you're big. Like, it doesn't even matter if you're a small dude, you're just bigger than a child. And I think we can all agree to that. And a lot of times, dad can be very overbearing and very scary to a small child. And so just changing your body language, getting a little smaller, can be really helpful for your kid. And it's an inclination for men to get bigger when they're scared and when they're trying to protect. And so in this instance, try to get smaller. The understand, we talked about it, is just that shift of, this is not about me, Carly Simon, this is not about me, this is not disrespect. And then the 4th piece, the empowerment piece, is just real empowering yourself, saying, this is my plan. How I'm going to show up in the moment is I'm going to stop, breathe, anchor. I'm going to get closer. I'm going to just change my body language, and I'm going to remind myself this is not about me. And I'm just going to put that on rinse, repeat while they're struggling.
Ed, you want to hop in?
Well, I was going to ask something, but time doesn't permit. What I will say is one of the things I share with people, sometimes you have to get smaller to get stronger.
I love that.
So what you were sharing there about dads, sometimes we have to get smaller to get stronger. And it's not a sign of meekness. It's a sign of strength that you can get smaller to allow everyone to get bigger.
That's beautiful.
So
Nice.
Just a thought.
One last question, and I'll kick it back to Ed. And you just tell me, like, maybe whether your thoughts on this statement. The biggest thing that I think I've picked up here is you really need to be a student to be a parent. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I think we need to be a student of ourselves. I think so many of us don't understand ourselves and why we do what we do. And I think we need to be a student of our kids and the environment that they're in and what is causing them to not feel safe. And it might not be you. It might not be your relationship. It might be that the noises are too loud around them. It might be that they feel disconnected at school. It might be other things that are causing them to not feel fully safe. But if you're a student and an observer, I always say when you're in the worst situation and you're really struggling, the best thing to do is stop, pause, and just notice what's happening. So being a student of what's happening instead of jumping to that, I'm going to fix it, I'm going to solve it, I'm going to do it. And then also being a student, like you said, of, and we've talked about already, of understanding how the brain works, how the body works. What are some of those best practices of communication and relationships that maybe we didn't learn growing up?
Fantastic. Thank you, Dayna.
Good stuff. Well, we've hit the bumper. Time has ran out, but we could do about 20 different conversations, and hopefully we'll do another one. But I just want to say, how can people get in touch with you?
The best place is you can find me on my own podcast at Calm the Chaos Parenting, or any social channel. I'm also Calm the Chaos Parenting there as well.
Well, I'd like to say thank you for taking the time from your positive, productive schedule, most importantly from being a mom.
Thank you.
Being a guiding light and a shining light for so many people globally. And we really appreciate it. And if there's anything we can do to help your mission, because I think we're all in this together,
yes,
we're more than happy to help you. Do you have any final words for our audience today?
I just want to tell everyone that's listening, if anything kind of struck a chord and you got that feeling in your gut and you're like, oh man, I effed up. I just want you to know you didn't. You're human. And I want you to know you're doing the best you can with what you've been given up to this point, and that you are exactly the parent that your child needs.
Great word send off. Thank you so much. Make sure you give yourself grace and don't just manage your time, manage your energy. Have a great day. All right, Mr. Drew, what did you take home from that today?
Really, that last question for me is what came across is, one, how much of a student Dayna is. Like, just her knowledge, her digging into learning and growing really came across for me, but then also sharing that knowledge. So I took that home as my takeaway, is really investing in being that student when it comes to yourself, your child, and just understanding this whole parenting process.
Good stuff. Many things I didn't get a chance to ask some of them, so hopefully there'll be a part two. I think one of the things is just letting things happen, right? Sometimes use your intuition. Sometimes you want to be there, but sometimes pull back and use your intuition when you're doing your parenting, because I believe that most parents have it in what they need to do and what they have to do, but sometimes asking for help and also just pulling back and let things happen and let them have their natural course is always a good thing. So
yeah,
I think it's
excellent.
Good. You sound like you wanted to say something. You said, yeah, I saw your head check. Anything you want to add to that?
It's okay.
Another
conversation another day.
Okay. Like I said, so there's just like right after the 5 minutes that, man, we need to do about 4 out of these, but hopefully she'll have time to do some more. But it was great. And also to love her energy,
yes,
right?
Absolutely.
Right. The energy, you can see the servant heart in her. And that's wonderful. So hopefully we'll have her back. So before we call it a conversation today, always you can email us at podcast@dadcentral.ca. We'd like to get your feedback, suggestions, tips. We need the tips because Drew and I don't know everything. Dayna doesn't know everything. So we're always looking for tips. Also, if you want to listen or watch any of the replays of our epic conversations, dadcentral.ca/podcast. And finally, we have a number of resources on our website, dadcentral.ca. As always, we want to thank you for taking the time to listen or watch the conversation. Remember to give yourselves grace. Don't just manage your time, manage your energy, and we'll see you soon. Be well and keep the faith.